Hi.
We're running late tonight. I had some lipstick on. It was my wife's lipstick, and it's every man should have red lips. That means you're kissing your wife.
If his wife wears lipstick.
Kiss her all the time.
But
Always,
not if she doesn't wear red lipstick.
well, then that's another story. That might be next week's.
Or last week's.
That's it. But Tim and Veronica crack clay, building a fair-proof marriage God's way. It's only one way to do it.
So we are running late because I went to Richmond with the boys today because my oldest son is getting married in a couple months and we had some wedding stuff to do.
And congratulations on that. Isn't that wonderful? We got some wonderful things to celebrate this week. This week, the Thursday, is our actual
Anniversary.
4-year anniversary.
It's this Thursday.
4-year anniversary.
So we were celebrating early in July when we went away, but our actual anniversary is this Thursday. We're very excited.
And like I said before, I asked Honey, what do you want for this anniversary? She said, Honey, take me anywhere, take me somewhere I've never been. And I take her to the kitchen. But you know what? I still love her. I still love her. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and that's not her strength. But that's not my need either. I don't have a need of a lady making gourmet dinners every night. That's not a need of mine. She supplies other needs that are a whole lot better than a 10-course meal. It really is. And she supplies that for me. And that's why it's so important to meet each other's needs. Because the devil is attacking. You know what the devil's biggest thing he uses to attack, especially married people, especially married men? Sex. He uses porn, sex, to get a man's attention any way he can do it, and he's doing it. It's out there all the time. If we don't have the supernatural power of the Holy Spirit inside us and utilize it, his power, not our power, we're helpless, but his power. And you know what? God's greater than the devil because God created Lucifer, who used to be a great angel up in hell, and then fell. God created him, so he's the creator and the created. You ask yourself, who's mightier, God or Lucifer? God. As a Christian, he's in you. Utilize it. Because the devil in these last days is working overtime to entice men. So make sure, married couples, you are pursuing your wife and doing everything you can to meet her needs God's way. We're going to talk about tonight with our wonderful book, Tony Evans.
Okay, so yes, we are done with his needs, her needs, and
we're going to Tony Evans.
We're going to talk about Tony Evans. We're going to go through Kingdom Marriage next.
Awesome book.
I've heard him on Focus on the Family talk about this and Kingdom Man and Kingdom Marriage, and I heard him with his daughter Crystal Hurst talk about Kingdom Woman.
Right.
And I love it. And I've always wanted to read the book, so we're going to do it. With you.
Let's do it. Let's go right into it, sweetheart. My lovely bride of 4 years. And someone's birthday's coming up in 2 weeks. So we got all kinds of stuff.
2 weeks from yesterday. It's a big 2 weeks coming up for me.
She never lets me forget it.
I'll be 25 again.
And I don't want to.
Can I do that? Be 25 again?
Yeah, I think you. Honey, I think you. The more plastic surgery. No, I'm just joking.
Plastic surgery. I don't want any plastic surgery.
Well, the more you do, the better.
Okay,
go ahead.
Anyway, so what is a kingdom marriage? So chapter 1 is origin. What is a kingdom marriage? A kingdom marriage, so a lot of times in marriage, we are always we're looking for passion. But a kingdom marriage is more than just passion. It also is a marriage with purpose. Right. Marriage, it was created by God to glorify God by expanding his rule and his reach.
Right.
Marriage uniquely reflects his image like nothing else. When you pursue God as a couple, then everything else falls into place. Your happiness, your love, your satisfaction, everything else falls into place. Keep your eyes on Jesus, even as a couple, and everything will fall into place. The absence, though, of a kingdom marriage makes it appear as though, I love this quote from Dr. Evans, the absence of a kingdom purpose for marriage makes it appear as if couples have been married by the Secretary of War rather than the Justice of the Peace. How many people know that? Have you seen that in friends' marriages, or have you had it in your own marriage in the past?
That's so true.
A lot of people have experienced that, if not firsthand, through friends or seeing other people or parents. Or we talked last week, and we'll talk again this week about how hard it is for children when the parents are in a loveless marriage, because he does address this in this chapter. So God established marriage. He established it to last. We, man, because we are flawed, we have transposed the benefit of marriage with the goal of marriage. Right. We think that the benefit is, the goal is happiness. And then it's not. That's the benefit, is happiness, if we're having a kingdom marriage. So then when we're not happy, then we want to move on and come up with something else.
That's man's way.
That's man's way. But we're still taking ourselves with us, aren't we? And until we learn to do it God's way, we're going to keep having the same problems over and over and over again. And
so this is kind of beyond his needs, her needs. I mean, we understand that's man's way, and God wants us to meet each other's needs. But there's something so much more important than that.
But if you're on the page with God and you have God in the center
exactly.
of your marriage,
but I'm just saying,
then you're
a lot of Christian
to
marriages. Why are Christian marriages divorcing like the world?
Right.
Why is that? Because it's not kingdom bound. Okay, nothing tells people more about Jesus than your marriage.
Right. So most people subscribe to the notion that marriage begins when you fall in love, and then you have this emotional experience with thrills and butterflies in your stomach, and you go to the altar and you're so infatuated with each other and you say I do, and then one day you don't anymore, right? And before long you're divorced. But some people stay together because they have a religious foundation. They stay together and hate each other, or they stay together for the sake of the kids. But he says a loveless environment punctuated by conflict, selfishness, and the opposite of the true image of God, because we know those things, lovelessness, conflict, and selfishness, are not the image of God. And then by having those and raising our children in those homes, that they don't learn the crucial lessons necessary to develop a good self-image themselves and to build a strong marriage themselves one day.
Right.
So we're creating those toxic marriages, and that's all they know how to do and how to repeat. So when they grow up, you don't want them to have that marriage that you're having. If it's
I like how Tony Evans compares marriage and divorce, and having a loveless marriage like that to almost like divorce. He compares it really how bad that is to children, everybody involved. What a poor testimony. Because that gets out. That gets out. People see that. People see how you really treat each other.
So don't stay, if you're going to stay together for the kids, work on your marriage.
By doing it God's way.
Work on your marriage by doing it God's way. There are lots of Christian counselors to will help you with marriage counseling if there's something that you can't work out, the two of you, that you need a third person to mediate with you. But make sure it's a good, solid Christian counselor and not someone who just claims to be, right? Someone with a biblical foundation. But that it can also understands the human.
So what came first, honey?
So
marriage
then,
or sin?
Well, we're not there. Okay, so we've lost sight of the blessing tied to biblical message. Right? God's purpose, when God's purpose and principles for marriage are undermined, then his image, so when we're not living God's purpose and principles within our marriage, then his image becomes distorted, because and our ability to influence others for God becomes eroded. Because kingdom couples must view marriage through God's kingdom lens.
His lens.
A kingdom marriage is defined as a covenantal union between a man and a woman who commit themselves to function in unison under divine authority in order to replicate God's image and expand his rule in the world through both their individual and joint callings. So a kingdom marriage is when you are together and you are committed to living under God's authority in your marriage, and therefore showing God's authority in His image to the world around you, and therefore making disciples, as we know that we're called to do as Christians, right? And it's not just in His call or my call, but our call together
as one,
because we do believe, as does Dr. Evans, that
we're
all created for a purpose, and God has called us. Once we enter into relationship with Him, He has called us for a purpose in the world to expand His kingdom. So our purpose is to share that purpose in marriage, in both of our calls. So as followers of the one true King, we should all seek to honor each other, no less, and to love each other, no less, and to expand God's dominion and rule through all that we do in marriage. So the key to influencing our society is found in solidifying biblical marriages. It starts with the husband and wife reflecting God's image, and then they model that. And what happens when you look in a mirror? The mirror reflects the image.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the image, right? It doesn't change the image. So if we're supposed to be reflecting God, we're not supposed to be changing His image to make it serve us. We're supposed to be reflecting it the way it actually is.
That God wants us to do it, not how we want to do it.
Right. So, the central theme. So the closer to God and His rule are tied to the definition of our marriages, then the more order, productivity, and fulfillment are experienced in our marriages. The further away from God we are in our marriage, the further away we are from God and His rule in our marriage, if we're not putting Him in the center of our marriage, the more chaos occurs in our home.
Just like Adam and Eve, it was such order till they sinned. Well, we're having chaos now, aren't we? Because this world is so far away from God. Same thing.
When I reread that, I was like, wow, that's just like our world today, right? Because when our world is closer to God and our country is closer to God, there's more order, productivity, and fulfillment. And what is, I'm getting a little political, but what is Marxism? It is anti-God. And then that is what we see in our streets of the chaos and the rioters, is the being away from God. Is our country being away from God, and the way that we've raised a generation. And the more chaos is occurring in our world, just like it will in our homes if we're not serving God in our marriages. All right, so any kingdom consists of three crucial components: the ruler, the realm of the subjects, and the rules of governance. God's kingdom, so He's the ruler, is the authoritative execution of His comprehensive governance over all creation. So He's the ruler, right? We're the subjects, all of us, and it's His rules. The kingdom perspective in anything we do, and I talked about the different kingdom man, kingdom woman, kingdom marriage. Everything we do with a kingdom's perspective means that the rule of God trumps the rule of man. And I try to, I've used eternal perspective before, I try to parent with an eternal perspective, not a for the day perspective. And I think it's the same thing as the kingdom perspective, right? Okay, so God's kingdom is larger than the temporal, governmental, and social realms that make up this world. So God's kingdom is more important than the temporary world that we're living in.
Because we live in a microwave society right now. We want everything instantly. But we don't have the patience to wait. As Christians, our final home, we're just passing through here. We should all be homesick for Jesus and spending time with Him, because that's all going to show what we do here on earth in our marriage. Oh man, do I feel bad what I've done in the past, but I want to correct that by doing it the right way now. His way, not man's way. So it's one thing to become a born-again Christian and live for Him, but you still got to put God first in your life. It's just not getting saved. That's the starting point. But you still have to put God first. Not the president, not anybody else in this world, but God first. Because He's the answer. He's the answer to all of our problems.
Right. So the church is not confined to the walls of the church. The
We're
kingdom
church.
is not confined to the walls
The
of the
bride.
church.
We're the
kingdom,
bride.
the church is all of the people
Right.
of the church, no matter the church, Christian church in the country.
So marriage came before sin.
So-
God made Adam and Eve in the garden. That's the first marriage, right? And then
So the foundation of the family,
Right.
the foundation of civilization is the family, right? So the God's kingdom consists of the family institution, consists of covenantal institutions
Right.
such as the family, the church, and the civil government or the state. God rules them all, and they are all accountable to Him.
right,
Failure
Everyone.
to function, and that was again
Right.
the family, the church, and the
Right.
government. Failure to function under His authority produces chaos and consequences. Again, what we're seeing in our world today: chaos and consequences.
Right.
Okay, just
But
like
the family's
Adam and
so
Eve
important.
experienced in the
Okay.
garden, as Tim's going to talk about in a
Right.
minute. So, but the foundation of our civilization is the family.
absolutely.
The foundation of the family is the marriage. Destruction of marriage naturally results in the destruction of civilizations. All three covenantal institutions were designed to operate
Right.
on a standard of absolute truth. That's not a gray area. God's law is not a gray area. It is an absolute truth. All right. So, did you want to talk about Adam and Eve?
When God established the first family and gave them dominion to rule, He stated that He would not rule independently of them, or decisions on earth would impact His decisions from heaven. God did this for one reason: to demonstrate to Satan and his demons that he can do more to manifest His glory through lesser creatures than through the once shining star. To the once shining star, who was a devil, who was an awesome angel, but he fell because of pride. But now, how God uses man to be victorious over the evil one. We have victory over him because of Jesus, the second Adam, who died for us. We often think that a battle is taking place between God and Satan. We talked about that, but God created Lucifer. He created him. So that would be similar to me saying that, I could take on, I could play basketball against LeBron James. Well, I don't have a chance against him. See? Because God is greater than us, than Satan, who's in the world. And we think Satan owns the world, or Satan is the ruler of this world. No, he's not. Jesus still rules it. Jesus has the whole world in his hands. But the man listens what Satan says to him, not God. But God's got control, guys. But man has a choice. And right now they're choosing the evil one, which is flesh, which is our desire. Anything that's not of God's is evil. Anything. So that's why the devil tempts us so much. We're saying, what's wrong with that? Go ahead. It's only a naked woman. And what's wrong with that?
Nobody will know.
He'll start with something so subtle. So subtle. We're just telling people, men, and we have women asking us too, the same problem. Don't do it. Do it God's way. Stop it. Turn from it. Flee from it.
So we as humans, we want to define God
Amen.
according to our purpose.
Right.
We make that mistake, don't we?
We
Instead
do.
of allowing God to
Amen.
God to define, we allow God to define our purpose.
Right.
We don't define God according to our purposes rather than His. So
Right.
when we operate our marriage on the principles of the kingdom agenda, then we're free to experience God's hand of blessing and His promise to work all things together for good. I mean, and we're sure praying for that with our marriage, right? That our mistakes, that He's going to work them all together for His good. And when we do not operate according to God's kingdom and His rule over our lives, then we limit our
Right.
opportunity to experience His hand.
Right.
We limit His ability because and it's not that He's limiting us, we're limiting ourselves
Right.
because we're not following
Right.
the way it was designed to be. We don't get to dictate to Him, right? He's the creator, we're the created. So a kingdom agenda may be defined as the visible manifestation of the comprehensive rule of God over every area of your life, manifesting in your marriage. It calls for aligning all you do, think, and say under God's rule. And then you'll experience the fruit of all the good God's planned for you. We want God to bless our agendas for marriage. We want God to okay our plans instead of seeking His will, right, and us fulfilling His plans for us. We want our plans, not His, right?
Right.
We want God to bring us glory instead of us bringing Him glory through honoring our marriage, right?
His glory.
It's His. So everyone was created with a divine intent. Every marital union exists to pass that intent down to the next generation. And then Tim talked about the dominion over the world with Satan. And but your decision as a couple regarding how you both relate to each other and how you reflect God to others through your union will affect the quality of life you experience, right? And so
it's just like a kid. They really don't watch they really know what we say. They watch what we do. And they're watching you as parents. How are you being as parents? Because that's a reflection of the bride is the groom. That's Jesus. He's coming back to take the groom is to come and take his bride, which is the bride. So it's all about Jesus.
So when couples go outside of the rule of God and they make decisions on their own based on their own desires, then that, like Satan, that's when they experience distance and conflict, as he did, Right, that's when you have trouble. So you can have a happy marriage or you can have a miserable marriage, depending on what you choose. Whether you choose to exercise your role as a reflection of God's image, or whether you try, or God isn't going to make you rule according to His rule. So the well-being of your marriage is determined by whether a man or a woman are reflecting God's image in their individual roles. Once that mirror we talked about earlier shatters or cracks, the reflection of the relationship breaks with it. Think about that. When your marriage breaks, when your mirror breaks, then it's hard to see that image in there, right? So when your relationship with Christ breaks, then it's hard to see Christ in you, right? I just said that. Yeah. Okay, so when we as couples fail to align ourselves under God's kingdom rule, the battle lines are drawn. And so we're given into Satan instead of God, instead of having a kingdom perspective, right? So conflict, struggle, challenge, differences, they shouldn't destroy our union, but they should show the power of Christ within us.
Right. So every day I pray, for my kids. I say, I want my kids to look at Jesus and what He's did for them, not what I've done. Because I have messed up. As a dad, I've messed up. As a father, I messed up. So I want my kids to look past that. For me, ask them to forgive me and look at what Jesus did for them. Because He is the one. He is the author. And it's such an important thing for a mother and father to their children to live this in kingdom life. It's so much more than just this earth and world that's soon passed away. A new heaven and new earth is coming. How glorious is that going to be? We're only here, but just a vapor compared to eternity. That's what's important.
So, God never intended for marriage to be done without Him.
Amen.
God established marriage. He established marriage, the institution of marriage, under His control, existing for His purpose. Thus, it was God who created man. It was God who communicated to man His word. It was God who revealed to man the need for woman. It was God who created woman from the man. It was God who brought the woman to the man. And it's clearly God's intent that He never be left out of our marriages, but rather be the definition of them.
Marriage first, and then sin came. And so I want to say here, guys, Galatians 4:6. Because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father, which means Daddy. Therefore, you are no longer a slave to sin, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. We owe that means whatever God has, we have. I owe cattle on 1,000 hills. However, on that time when you did not know God, you were slaves to those which by nature are not God. But now that you have come to know him as a Christian, or rather to be known by God, how is it that you turn back again to the weak and worthless eternal things of this earth to do what you desire when before you were saved? Here's a great illustration of salvation. This is so powerful in my David Jeremiah study book. Listen to this real good about what a Christian, what a transformation of being lost to found. When a person is saved, the law moves to the side and love moves to the center. The believer is no longer enslaved to the harsh master of sin, but he becomes instantly mature son or daughter of God. The shift in a person's essence from slave to sin to son with God, the Son of God, and has the hair of God. The hair of God is immediate. Although benefitors don't understand that maybe till later. But what a transformation, where Paul was out to kill Christians. Then he became a Christian. He radically was changed to be a believer, to help all those Christians that he was trying to destroy. That's what God did for me. And that's why we have to put Jesus first in our life, because God radically changes you when he comes inside you. Okay, so you have to show that in your marriage and live it. Not just talk about it, but when your kids see you when no one else sees you. When I saw my dad on Friday, Saturday night, no one else saw him. That's who he was. Who are you when no one's looking? That's who you are. We love you guys. Live for Jesus. He's the answer. He's the only answer. This world's going away.
You can't depend on this world for sure.
There's a new heaven, new earth.
There's always something going on.
New heaven, new earth.
It's all temporal. All right, y'all. Have a great week. We love you. If you have any prayer requests, let us know.
We're here for you. Okay.
All right.
Don't go there.